Justin Pearse has spent 30 years covering an industry that has survived every apocalypse thrown at it and somehow come out cheerful. He watched the dot-com crash, the cookie wars, GDPR, the death of print, and about 400 predictions of the industry's imminent demise from press row, took notes, and decided it was mostly brilliant. Then he did something no self-respecting journalist was supposed to do, and started a trade publication and a PR agency simultaneously, which in media ethics terms is roughly equivalent to a referee buying a stake in one of the teams. He has opinions. This is the ADOTAT Show.
Hi, Pesach Lattin, and this is the ADOTAT Show. Today we have Justin Pearse, editor of New Age Digital and co-founder of BlueStrike Group, joining us from the UK. He's been deep in the trenches of attention metrics, gaming advertising, and building a media company that does things differently. First of all, Justin, welcome to the show, and how are you doing, mate?
Very good. Good to see you. It's been a hectic day, so it's nice to sit down, relax, and chat to you.
So before we dive in the alphabet soup of attention metrics and gaming advertising, I want to start somewhere more fundamental. You said the industry resilience is always about the people, which sounds almost quaint in an era where everyone's convinced AI is about to replace us and the robots are coming for immediate plans. So here's my question. In an industry that survived more near-death experiences than a cat with 9 lives, GDPR, cookie apocalypse, AT&T, recession panic, now AI anxiety, what is about the people in this industry that keeps it from actually dying?
Do you know what? We had a hosted lunch just yesterday. I was having this conversation with the people I was sitting with, and I've been around for about, almost 30 years down this industry. You see the cycles and then all the things you mentioned, there's destruction and rebirth, and I just think that when we launched BlueStrike Group, which changed the new digital age, because Andy and I, my business partner, have been around quite a while, running other trade sites, was to do something quite different, and we thought things that we've seen over almost 30 years, the one key ingredient for success is the people. You'd have the best technology, you'd have the best of everything, but the wrong people, it doesn't fly. I think that's why you look around the industry of people that I've known since I was a young reporter. They were sort of, young sales guys, girls, perhaps, 20 years ago. The ones that have big jobs leading the industry now tend to still be here because people always matter. And I think, the AI is coming, and what's interests me over the last kind of maybe 4 months, I think the panic within our industry and also within the entertainment industry, it's alongside us, obviously, in the film and TV industries, the panic there that it was going to, decimate the industry, the worry within our industry, within advertising, that's going to take people's jobs. I think that's kind of gone. I think the fact AI is going to have, unknown, hugely destructive impacts on all our lives, on society, on politics, on the way we live our lives. I think with our industry that it is just another tool, and it's a hugely powerful, potentially destructive tool, but it's a tool that people have to deliver better results for their clients or their customers, their partners, or consumers. The more people I speak to, it's sort of taken as read now that AI is being used, and we launched a series recently on the AI pioneers, talking to people who weren't just talking about what may be or how this could change, but what was happening now and how they're using AI now. So I just think that that's why people are constant, and AI will definitely reshape our industry. AI will definitely change the layout of jobs. AI will definitely change the structural framework of agencies and publishers and ad tech firms. But the human will always be there driving the end result, and the best results will always come from the best human.
If last touch attribution worked, your waiter would get full credit for the meal. We make sure the chef gets credit too. Incremental.
So you've also said that there's no need for negativity in this industry because we could all be coal miners. That's either incredibly zen or slightly delusional, and they can't decide which. Where does this optimism come from? And you ever have moments where you think, okay, maybe we should panic just a little bit?
Tell you what I thought. I started a journalist about, 2017, a long time ago, covering the .com boom. I was a journalist for a very long time, and the best stories were the ones that sort of were negative. If it bleeds, it leads, all these cliches, and, the aim was to kind of take down people, to find out the truth behind the lies. And then when I sort of progressed in my career, and I do what I'm doing now, as one of the 3 founders of BlueStrike Group, when we launched our publication, New Digital Age, our new one, Retail Media Age, covering the industry. It was to sort of cover or chronicle its brilliance and celebrate its success. And I just think that this is one of the most sort of creative, exciting places to be as an industry. And yes, you could be covering the coal industry, and I don't think that'd be as exciting. You could be working in the plastics industry. I'm saying this from a point of view of a kind of a chronicler of the industry from a publication point of view. I just think that, of course, there are a lot of things wrong with our industry. And of course, there are lots of bad practices. And of course, there are things that need to be uncovered. That's not our job. Our job is to celebrate brilliance. I do think that there are, I caveat this with, of course, there are exceptions. There are few people, most people in our industry don't get up and go to work wishing to do harm to others. Most people have, I think still, I sort of came into the industry in the dot-com boom, where it had these hippie ideals of changing the world. And I do think that a lot of people in this industry still now have those ideals, that what they're doing is how to make the world a better place.
So here's a spicy idea, however. Maybe the industry's resilience is actually a problem. Like, are we so good at surviving we never fix the problems? Cookie depreciation gets delayed. We all exhale and go back to what we were doing. Privacy regulations comes. We find workarounds. Are we resilient or just good at kicking the can down the road?
Question. I think there's sort of two-part answer. The ability of especially ad tech to kind of work on the edges and, get around without being kind of breaking the rules or breaking regulation, but they'll find a way to sort of make the industry kind of keep surviving and evolve and grow. And yes, that can be problematic sometimes, but I do think the resilience is, someone like Terry Kawaja, who's one of my personal heroes, if you hear him talk about the industry, it's despite the kind of quite downbeat approach of the industry, or what it's been like the last few years. Actually look at the figures, look how much it's grown, look how much these leading companies are actually growing. And yes, I know what you mean, that because in my those things like GDPR in the UK was one of the biggest problems in the world, that came along, nothing happened, and then people got around it. So yes, of course, people would always get around things and kick the can down the road. But also, I think that resilience means that the good comes out. I think our industry goes in cycles, and the things that I remember being talking to companies, 25 years ago, and I was thinking, that's an amazing idea. It was just too early. And I always liken it to a wave coming in, and you have the best idea and the best approach and the best technology, the best team, best everything. But if the wave's not quite there, it goes away. Number sort of iterations again, you'll see a company and go, well, wow, that's amazing. That's exactly what I saw the company do 20 years ago. So it's waiting for that wave to come in. So yes, kicking the can down the road can cause problems, and it can make people just want to skirt around the edges and not obey the rules. But also resilience means that in the end, the best ideas will bear fruit.
So let's talk a little bit about attention, the metric that everyone agrees matters, but nobody can agree on how to measure it. It's like the industry collectively said, viewability is garbage, CTR is a lie, and attention, that's the good stuff. And then we immediately start talking about what even attention means.
Yeah.
When you're talking to advertisers who've been happily living in a viewability bubble, what's the aha moment that finally makes them realizing they're measuring things the wrong way?
I think, again, without being, I myself was looking back, but so the average CMO, I think, that I was talking to 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, is very different to the average CMO now. The average CMO 10 years ago, apart from a few, us standout cases, didn't really want to get into the weeds, didn't really want to understand, didn't have time to understand all the variants of the industry and all the potential problems. Now he or she does. Now the results are obvious, Another cliche, but it's true. We are all living online now. We are all buying online. We are all socializing online. We are all living online on different formats, whether that be on our phones or on mobile screens outside or the computer in front of us. So suddenly, this idea that everything's digital now, so why are you talking about digital? I think that's slightly false, but we are all living digital lives. So the average CMO, the average CFO, the average CEO now wants to see results. And that's why we're seeing this big shift. I would say attention's kind of gone off the boil a little bit, and the focus now is all about outcomes. Because attention was something that came along, people realized the offer is spurious metric for advertising, what it did for purpose. And for a CMO or CMO now paying far more attention and understanding far more, those vanity metrics became obvious what they were, vanity metrics. So the industry wanted to deliver something real, something more, useful to measure the financial performance of marketing advertising. So technically, which I think.
So what do you think? Go ahead.
No, I was saying, and then Pitch came along. I would say almost all agencies now have a way of measuring effectively. There are incredible companies out there that can, measure attention really effectively to get through the steely gaze of the CFO. But then recently the change moved to outcomes, because obviously it's trying to get closer to results that the CFO and the CEO want to see. And outcomes means if I can measure this advert makes Justin go out and buy from the shop next door, I know that I can tie that up. I can tell exactly why. Recently I've been quite fascinated by is obviously retail media to launch publication, and Iceland's recently installed sensors around there so they can measure the real world impact, the attribution of someone seeing a digital screen in a store and then buying something at the till. So these are the metrics that comes to fore. So I would say attention is still there. I would say now outcomes are more of a focus. So it's all about this thing of moving from fancy metrics to metrics that actually demonstrate what we're doing, drives real world results.
This is the problem we're seeing with outcomes, is that a lot of people are grading their own homework, meaning they're providing the outcomes that are the least common denominator of that media, meaning they're hitting this metric, and so they're pushing everything towards that. And of course, you're having great outcomes on paper, but are you actually having business outcomes?
You're right. I think what's interesting as well, back to sort of the AI conversation, is AI is coming in now with sort of creative tech measurements and actually measuring how effective different creative variations are. And the ability is, I won't name names, it's not fair, there's lots of great companies that are doing this, but they are able to prove what actually works in terms of creative, how that actually delivers an end result. So yes, this is never going to be as, nothing's ever exact as having equal stage and knowing how something directly translates to sale. But I do think with the moves of retail media, with the use of that sort of data, with the moves of things like, AI measurements of creative, we're getting closer and closer and closer to really actually putting value on the work everyone does. And we all knew the problems that went on in the early and later years of programmatic advertising, the black box, etc., etc. But for a long time, people, which I mean the clients, they just didn't want to know. They didn't want to know. They think it just kind of works. Let's keep doing it, and then we'll keep doing it. I think now there's such a the buy side the clients have become far more educated and far more demanding of the industry. So they saw vanity metrics and black boxes don't really hold sway anymore. So I do think getting closer and closer and closer to real world outcomes. And as you say, it's always a battle, but I do think the battle is getting close to being won quite well.
So you were involved in a 2-year attention and gaming study. Gaming advertising projected to be over $100 billion by 2028. Intrinsic in-game ads differ fundamentally for interstitials, are part of the environment, not interruptions. And the metaverse hype has cooled D, but 3D environments still remain relevant. Brand safety and fraud concerns differ from traditional digital. Justin's starter brief comment suggested that frustration with how brands are approaching gaming. So you mentioned the 2-year gaming study. What did that research change in your own thinking? What surprised you or challenged your assumptions about how attention works in gaming? How about fraud mitigation in gaming? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I know a bit about it. A lot of people, but it's not my specialist area. I wouldn't want to delve into it too deep.
Hi. So let's shift gears. You're stranded on a desert island. There's no NDA, no CAN panels, no attention metrics dashboards, just coconuts and existential dread. You described this question as being very difficult, which I respect. And you mentioned you want someone good at building things. So here's what I want to know. Walk me through your survival strategy. Who's on your island crew? And more importantly, is the builder there because you've accepted that you're useless with your hands? Or is this some sort of elaborate construction project that you're planning?
First of all, I'm useless with my hands. DIY and I are quite far apart. I'm not allowed to do anything around the house, really. I just call people and get them to do it for me. I'm putting this on a work frame, because obviously in the real world I have my family on the island. But I just think, I have to say I have my business partners, Lydia Oakes and Andy Oakes, who you know. Andy Oakes is good at building things. He's quite sort of practical. I'm not. The three of us work well as a team. I do think on an island, aim is the aim is to survive, the aim is to get off, and you want people you can work with in a collaborative way. And I think the way that, without sounding too cheesy, that Andy, Lydia and I built the business from three very different standpoints, 3 very different experiences, and built it, kept it going, and managed to sort of, create something that lives and breathes and, floats off success. Hopefully that's, I guess, why I got my talent going with it. But yeah, building things, building rafts is definitely not skill grinding.
So do you imagine building, let's say, a basic shelter? Or are you going to go like a full iron fortress?
I'll probably just have a few coconut leaves and hope it doesn't rain. I guess it's desert or it's a right rain, so that's some coconut leaves for shade. But yeah.
So you mentioned that you thought this question was very difficult. What makes it hard? Is it choosing between people you actually want versus people you'd find useful?
Yeah, I suppose that, I say, if it was a real world, I have my family, but then if you think about it, you want to put together the crew of the right people. And, I think you need people that work well together, you need to collaborate well together, but you also need people with skills that you don't have. And on a desert island, you would need someone that can build potentially a raft, someone that understands, how an escape vessel works, which is definitely not me. That's why, again, bring it back to the industry. That's why I think it's why our company works, and that's why some of the best companies work, is having the right people. It's a different skill sets, I think, especially in having seen digital media marketing over the last 25 years, that as it keeps evolving, and what the industry is now, it's very different from years ago or 10 years before that, you need different skill sets. Retail media, again, back to our story, we recently launched Retail Media Rate publication, and that I think is a fascinating area where you're seeing the need for new skills really comes to the fore. And when it sort of, the new for retail, so online retail media came in a few years ago, retailers were different people to media people. Retailers weren't publishers, they weren't advertisers, they didn't understand it, wasn't their world. So you had to see a cross-contamination from the advertising industry into the retail industry. And that shows, again, it's just about the people. And back to Desert Island, you need different people to create success. So in Desert Island, you need someone that can build an escape raft, maybe someone that can understand how to forage, get the best food, someone that can help sort of keep the silos together, not fighting or eating each other. So again, that's why it always comes back to people.
So you also wished for this superpower of time travel, which is fascinating because it suggests either you want to change things or you want to experience something, or maybe you just want to go back to know lottery numbers. What would you do with time travel? Go back, forward, or both?
I do think, and one of the things that I think, I remember years ago, and my dad said to me when I was maybe 30, so a long time ago, he used to always say, I can't believe what you'll see. And I look at my daughter now and think and say the same thing. And just what we've seen, what I've seen as a kind of observer of this industry and therefore wide society in the last 30, 40 years, is incredible. So just be able to go forward and see what will happen within 10 years. Because the things that we know to be true are, we know now AI will shape our world. We don't know how or why. We just don't, know that this will transform society. I don't think we're really seeing the actual impact of that yet. Social media, when my daughter was born 10 years ago, I was quite pleased that she wouldn't come of age, as in sort of being a teenager, until hopefully the rules around social media have been developed. So we're in the foothills of almost everything that I've been chronicling for the last almost 30 years. But we're on the verge of these things coming true. So be able to control forward 10 years and seeing what will happen, what will come of all this amazing technology and innovation and simply work would be amazing.
Is there any point in the
80s? Let's go back to the 80s.
And an ad tech industry that you would go back and perhaps kill someone or prevent something being made?
I go back to .com days much older, because when I started I was a very young reporter, and it was just an amazing time. I saw incredible things happening that's being built. So we could be back in that time, maybe, at the age I'm now.
So if your Desert Island crew had to build a media company from scratch using only resources found on the island, coconut, sand, whatever, what would it look like? What is the Desert Island media business model?
That's a really good question. I suppose, as always, it's about who's the audience. And I suppose for Desert Island, the audience would be, we haven't been to an environmental crabs, big monkeys, lemurs. You'd have to develop something focusing on their wants and needs. I guess what they're most interested in is fighting with food. The media organisation of Desert Island would be something that covers fighting with food and survival, I suppose.
So if you were stuck in if you're stuck on the island for a year but then got rescued, what would you not miss about the industry?
What I'd not miss is the fact it never stops. I was having this conversation again at this lunch we had yesterday. Again, when I started off, as a young journalist, I went to Cannes Line Festival, spent a week getting drunk on yachts. It didn't work that hard then. And then I come back, and a week later, I'd write a NASDAQ piece because there was no email. There was no way to get anything back from Cannes then. I mean, just really starting off. And we forget how that wasn't long ago. And really, the world stops. And I think when I left work at 5 on Friday. It kind of stopped until Monday. When I walked out the door at the end of the day, it sort of stopped. You didn't have email on your phone. Nobody really contacted you. Yes, I left work and went to a bar and met contacts and networks and found out stories, but the industry didn't. It stops. It stops. I think nowadays the only time, in the UK at least, that it stops is Christmas. But everyone stops. So the year, it never ever stops. I think looking back at that time, and again, it wasn't very long ago, and just always forget how it's just recently that we weren't all connected all the time. And there's so many amazing things that come from that. But I do think that, and looking at my daughter and looking at sort of friends, younger children, it can be an incredibly punitive, wild, sort of amazing world. So that's what I feel. Go back.
You said a home run for this interview would be clearly setting out why the different approach to journalism, media, and PR is working. I'll take that as a challenge. So let's cut to it. What is the different approach at BlueStripe in new digital age, and why do you think it works when so many media models are gasping for air?
Well, I think I was a journalist for a very long time. As I say, I started about 25 years ago. Back then, publishers could produce, I'm talking about B2B, only publishers produce trade magazines. PR agencies did PR, and that was it. You never mix because that wasn't how it was done. As you've seen over the last 25 years, what's not been done before doesn't mean it can't be done again. So the most successful companies are the ones that have done things differently, to use that kind of cliched phrase. And we realized that we could do this. We could have a PR agency that does PR and comms for some amazing companies. And we could also own a trade magazine that wrote about those companies, yes, but also about the whole rest of the industry. And we could make the two parts work seamlessly well together. And I think that one of the things that I look back on now, and the things that I thought to be true when I was just a journalist, aren't true anymore. And back to this idea of sort of transparency and ethics, I can say hand on heart now, I'm probably more transparent than way back in the B2B publishing days. Because B2B publishing is always by necessity. It's not. It's clean. There's nothing sort of dodgy about it. But publishers have to make money, and they have to make money by charging clients in magazines in different ways, often by advertising, also lots of different ways from that. We found that and no one else is doing this in the UK yet, that we can own both. We can own both a PR agency and we can own a respective trade magazine. Personally, I am on the PR side of business. Lydia runs that. I focus on the publishing side. But there's no now reason why you can't do both things, as long as you're totally upfront and transparent. And I say, we can do that, I think, far more than I used to be able to do way back when I was an illustrator or inverted commas trade mag. So you can do things differently, as long as, I would say, you always have the interests and respect for your audience at heart. So I think that one of the things you always do is, as when you edit magazines, trade magazines, all you really care about is your audience. Also, what you really care about is the stories you're giving them. You care about the coverage you're giving them. You care about the events you put on for them. And then, if you're working with clients and they do advertise a story, good. That's a bonus. But that's the journalist outlet. But always have the interests of your clients and your readers and your audience at heart. And that's why BlueStripe, the bit I run, which was the publishing arm, that's all I really care about. As long as people reading and consuming our content, coming to our events, love it, feel invigorated, informed, entertained, I'm happy. And that's the same sort of approach that we apply across the whole business. PR business, as long as the audience, their clients, feel they're getting amazing response to the audience, that the PR side of business is PRing into, everyone wins. So it's all about respect for the audience.
So you mentioned your Yoda is Bruce Daisley, a former Twitter VP when there was Twitter, author, workplace culture guru. What specifically did he teach you that shaped how you think about media, business, or life? Give me the Bruce Daisley wisdom that stuck.
Yeah, well, when I met Bruce, he wasn't as senior. He became obviously over a long time, and then he became kind of the boss of Twitter when it was Twitter, and he came up with this phrase that later sort of took off. Love your work, love your job. I can't remember, love your job. It became this hashtag thing that everyone sort of.
He wrote the joy of work, right?
No, Joe, that was the next stage of his career. Everyone I knew who worked at Bruce loved him. Everyone I knew who worked at Bruce found it an amazing experience. Everyone I knew who worked at Bruce was run for an amazing company. Everyone who worked at Bruce what enable people was. He was like some sort of spider in the center. Most of what he did, I didn't work with him, so I'm better, how good he was at his, day-to-day job. But everything he did was about sort of building amazing teams, building teams around people. I think now what he's gone on to do now is he's a chronicle of sort of work culture with a very successful podcast and books, he's a best-selling author, and that's again examining sort of the changing face of work through the people within it, the people helping it change. So he was just a exemplar of someone who always put people first, and he's one of those people that no one I've ever met in the industry have a bad word to say about him, and that I think is something that everyone should sort of try and be.
So a quick multiple choice question. What's the biggest problem with how ad tech trade media covers the industry right now? A, too much access journalism, regurgitating press releases as new. B, too much negativity and doom scrolling for clicks. C, not enough actual investigation to the stuff that matters. D, everyone's writing the same bubble of readers. E, the people writing about the industry have never actually worked in it.
Last point is kind of fascinating. I'll go back to the other point. Is because, again, when we launched New Digital Age, what I wanted was to have people in the industry write for us. Because even way back in time when I was managing a big team of reporters who are now some of the best journalists in the industry, there's no one that could write a best and more informed piece about how programmatic advertising works. No journalist, there's someone that works in it every single day. And I think that's the difference, is that even though, I was a journalist, I still am a journalist, but I do many different things, and I see life through a journalist's eyes. I'm also in the industry. I think that's a really important thing, that some of our best journalists, some of the best journalists I've worked with, I won't say names, you know who they are, they're amazing journalists. I need those sort of journalists, but also there's also a need for people from within the industry to give their viewpoints. And that's why I think you've seen over the last few years LinkedIn just explode, because it's people, if you work in the industry, you kind of know how it works. Of course, when you write on LinkedIn, you want to get some social currency and do well for your business, but you see the passion that comes out of people who are talking about trading or transparency or these intricate in the weeds things, because they work every day. But that's your point. So I do think our industry press is incredibly strong. Way back when we launched BlueStripe, about 9 years ago, we did a lot of media trading, and I used to have a slide in my media trading deck that was a picture of all these publications, print publications. They'd all gone. And the next slide was about the 4 that was left. So we saw a decimation of trade publications with the internet, for obvious reasons. But I think over the last few years, we've seen a real, flourishing again of really strong trade press. And I think, although, yes, you can get all your information analysis through things like LinkedIn or blogs or newsletters, we all want to filter. We want someone to edit the world around us, the industry around us. And that's why I think we're seeing amazing publications, DigiDay, AdWeek, etc., grow again and get stronger and stronger. I do think the trade press is in a great state. The point about regurgitated press releases, I think that's less of a problem now. That's often done to fill the sort of the content chasms. I don't think that's really the approach anymore. Cheap clicks and building for scale, that's sort of gone away. The focus is much more now on the value of your audience. And if you look at, again, not naming names, but publications around have a really very tailored, very loyal, very targeted audience. And our industry's big, but it's not that big. You don't need millions of readers, because there really aren't many. So I do think that the trade front now is in as strong as it was back when I was in it day to day, 20 years ago. It's changing, and obviously print's sadly not really here much anymore. But I do think trade press is getting stronger and stronger. The problem is obviously, the business model's changing, and the business model of old, which is advertising, as we know, is what we're reading. But in the same way every publisher is, I speak to publishers every day, national consumer publishers, revenue diversification is all. Different ways of making money from your audience. That's my earlier points. If you have respect for your audience at your heart, and you want to make their lives better in some way, finding a different way to monetize that is kind of, while not easy, sort of straightforward. What do they need? What do they want? So if you can help provide it for them, then you can rightly take recompense.
So if you could go back and give advice to yourself when you first started in the industry, before BlueStripe, before New Digital Age, what would you tell younger Justin? What do you know now that would have saved you time, money, or just heartache? It's like a fortune cookie for baby Justin.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I suppose I tell myself just to go for it earlier. Maybe I should be starting your own thing. But back when I was, especially the dot-com days, my early career, it was all writing about the industry, which was change, build, grow. And everyone I knew was starting companies, selling them, buying big companies, starting to the companies that are now the biggest in the world. So that's all I knew as my industry. But I was at that time just a journalist covering it. And I always thought, why aren't I doing it? Why aren't I launching something? It took me a long time, so I finally did do it myself, and I've loved it. So I guess that's been my advice. Just go and launch it. And, the difference maybe at that time, when digital came along, launching a company, while not easy, was a bit more straightforward because a website is easier to launch than a print publication. You don't need printers. The barriers to entry were lower, still high obviously, but it was much more. It's an easy way in. But I didn't take it, and for quite a long time. So I tell myself just to get going earlier and don't be worried.
So final question, Justin. When all is said and done, when New Digital Age has covered its last story, BlueStripe has helped its last client, how do you want to be remembered in this industry? Not the LinkedIn headline, but the actual legacy. What is the Justin Pearse stamp that you want to leave?
Having helped people and somehow slightly helped, push the industry forward in a way. I do think, I've worked with employees of amazing people. I've seen them go do amazing things. I do think and hope that some of the things I've done, whether that be sitting on industry boards or producing trade publications or putting on events, I do think and hope that's helped the industry advance. We've done some recent things such as training. This initiative called PMU, which is focused on helping women sort of refine and finesse their public voices. I hope and think that done some good. Yeah, I'd like to hope that I've done some good along the way.
And now the hardest part of the show where we see your dance moves.
I can't get up. I'm stuck to my chair. I would, but I've got very bad.
That was Justin Pearse, the man who has spent 30 years chronicling an industry that keeps nearly dying and never quite does, and whose conclusion after all of it is essentially, the people are the point. The technology is just the excuse. And if you think AI is the most frightening thing this industry has ever faced, you clearly were not here for the .com crash. Huge thanks to our sponsors, Troutman Amin LLP and Incremental.com, two companies that understand that accountability is not just a talking point, which in this industry remains a genuinely radical position. I'm Pesach Lattin. This is the ADOTAT Show. Stay bold, stay curious, and remember that somewhere out there, a 10-year-old already knows what comes next.